Oh, sorry about that. Well, anyway, I was just having some tea and crumpets because I was just looking at our lesson, and it's 101, the British Empire building colonies. And whenever I think of drinking tea and eating crumpets and biscuits, I always think about England. And now we're going to be thinking a lot about England. But we're going to also be thinking a lot about colonies. Colonialization, they're going in and taking over lands and bringing people to live there, settlers. It was a hard thing, really. Most settlers, most people, ordinary people would not like to take off in a ship and go, 1,000 miles over into a new land that they didn't know anything about. You can imagine. So they would have a hard time getting people to settle in these lands, especially because most of the guys that went there, they were explorers, and they weren't the settling type. I'll just say that. And so basically these countries knew in order to really claim this land and know this land is to settle the lands that they claimed. So this was happening not only in England, but we're going to be talking about France. We're going to be talking about the Netherlands, Holland, and we're going to be talking about Spain. We already did a lot of talking about Spain and the Spanish conquistadors. And they were having a hard time settling. Although, of course, we know that when they found silver, many of these guys came, but they were miners, and they were wanting to go home after they mined a bit. And that's the way it was. These guys, they want to go get the stuff, bring it back to Europe. That's where their families were. So when we talk about colonies, it's a different kind of a people that had to be brought into this area. These vast empires started stretching around the world. The new lands for Europeans to explore were one reason, and the other, they did have some that wanted to go to evangelize these lands, especially this native people that was very strange to them. And new adventures. Some were just adventurers and they just wanted to go. We know those explorers were the adventuring type, weren't they? When we look at their lives. And then there are some people, and these people we want to really focus on later because they were the true colonists. These were the people that wanted to start a new life because they had been persecuted in their countries. Or because they had been persecuted because of their beliefs, religious beliefs, because they had been persecuted because they loved God. A lot of them, they're the ones. They weren't wanting to come back to Europe. They wanted to start a total new life. Those were the true colonists. Well, let's go back to all of these colonies when we talked about, we talked about Portugal and Vasco da Gama. Well, Portugal and Vasco da Gama, Portuguese they became navigators. They went out to explore lands first of all, and they wanted to get over there to China and to Japan too. So we talked about Vasco da Gama, and Vasco da Gama in 1498. This is about 1492. Remember Columbus? Well, Vasco in 1498, he wasn't interested in the new land. He wanted to get to this land by going around Africa, and he did. And so he got over there to India, and he defeated the Muslims over in India, and he established a Portuguese colony in India. And in Indonesia, on the Spice Islands, they had established a Portuguese colony. But one of the biggest Portuguese colony was in the New World. As we know, 33 years after Pedro Cabral claimed the eastern coast of South America, he claimed it for Portugal. And now, even if you go to Brazil, they speak Portuguese. Their settlers were Portuguese that came there. But that was 33 years after. So it was long time. We're talking about in the 1500s. But they were one of the first Portuguese colonies. And then, of course, we have the Dutch. Suddenly the Dutch, they come out of nowhere, I think, and they think, we are businessmen. We need to go. We need to send somebody. In 1602, the Dutch East India Company sent to Southeast Asia to find, they wanted to go to Southeast Asia and get some of the spices and the silk and everything that was in South, and they tried to establish colonies there too. In 1609, there was a guy, you haven't heard about him yet, and his name was Hudson. Henry, his name again, Henry Hudson. Well, Henry Hudson, he was looking for a northwest passage to Asia too, but he sailed for the Dutch instead. And so he went up and he actually explored and went down to this river, which we call the Hudson River now, because he discovered it. Actually, had been discovered by the Indians long before, but he had discovered this way and thought, surely this is the passage, the Northwest Passage there. Wow! And he called this whole area that he explored this whole area, and he called it the New Netherlands. In fact, he settled in 1624 as the Dutch West Indies Company started, instead of the East Indies Company started. He figured there's a West Indies now, and I'm going to find that way over there to China. He was going to do it, but he started this company, this new company, and in 1624, they did bring Dutch settlers into this area, and they called this area New Amsterdam. You wouldn't believe it that we had a New Amsterdam in America. So later on, we find out when the English start settling, we're way down the line, you're going to find out about New Amsterdam. New Amsterdam gets its name changed because England takes over, and of course they're at odds with the Dutch, and the English said, we have to change. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to change this port's name, and so they changed it to New York, and that's for New York City. So just a bit of trivia there. We know that New York used to be New Amsterdam, and the Dutch really started a colony there first. Quite a deal. And now we're going to get into the French. Yes, the French. The French king thought, man, I got to get a part of this. Spain is becoming extremely wealthy. Now we have England bringing back all kinds of things from this new land. And him thinking, if France is going to be in this whole line with all these countries, we need to have part of this. We need to send colonies, but we also need to find that route over there, that route over to China. We're all looking for that route. I didn't realize it. America was so big. I didn't realize that it would take years before be able to go a lot longer way, be able to go around the world to China. But they didn't want to miss out. Neither did France. We'll talk about France in just a bit.